Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We're your hosts, David O.
And Carly R.
And today we're getting a little bit of a later start. You know, we had some car trouble, we had some this, we had
But
that.
now we have coffee, guys.
Everybody has
coffee.
hot coffee.
Yes.
Hot coffee.
Well, I
so
cold
we're good.
coffee, but that's fine.
Today we're joined by a very special guest, Joey. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Carly? Despite the issues.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm
We're
here.
in the same boat.
I'm here.
We're in the same. Yep. That's it.
So-
That's all that counts.
We weren't sure if that was going to happen. It was
I
like,
didn't
she's
think
coming,
so.
she's
I
not
know.
coming, then the car
I know.
starts.
Yes, and then the car starts, and we're here. And Eric, I don't give a shit. You're probably doing good. Anyway,
Rude. How
are you, Eric?
That's
How are
fine,
you?
David.
Are you
I'm
good?
asking, which Raven are you taking? You know, I've already asked.
I'm taking Justin Matabike, okay?
Okay,
Out of the
good.
three.
Okay,
Jesus.
good.
I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to lose any of them.
It is right, though. That's probably the right answer.
That is the right
Yeah.
answer. Where are you from, Joey?
I'm from Montgomery County, so I grew up in Olney, if you know where that is, in
Oh,
Montgomery
wait.
County.
Did you go to Sherwood?
I went to Sherwood High School.
What year?
I was 2011.
Okay. I'm gonna have to have you talk to my wife after this. But okay, cool.
Oh.
That's ominous.
My wife went to Sherwood, and all his sisters went to Sherwood.
What?
Oh.
What's the last name? Actually, you don't have to say that.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll do it.
After the pod. After the
Forgot.
pod.
Yeah. Good catch there, guys.
Yes. When were you first introduced to recovery?
So I was first introduced to recovery in, what, 2017?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2017. Yeah, and it was like through treatment.
Yep.
So through treatment, I had, this is kind of weird. I was like, oh, wait, we're starting. Like, where's the readings?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, I got introduced to recovery in 2017, and it was, through hospitals and institutions. So after, and I'll get, I guess, more into it as we go along, but, through, after being, like arrested for the first time. And it was like after doing like things when I was a kid, right? Like I had been like, smoking weed as a kid, and then I had been, experimenting with other drugs. And then eventually that landed me, no surprises there, like ended me up in a hospital.
Yep.
And then they take you to the floor that like, and it's like, so where I grew up, there's like a hospital like in kind of like the neighborhood, and I had like been there for like appointments and things like that, like over the years of having like grown up there as a kid, right? And then they like took you up to the floor that you've never been on before, right? And it was always like, well, what's going on up there? And then like little did I know, right? That was where my my like recovery journey started. But that wasn't when I. It wasn't really like when I got clean, but that was just like when I first, I think that was like when I got my first basic text.
Well, that's
right?
a perfect segue. How long have you been clean?
I've been clean for almost 6 years now. So my clean date is January 27, 2018.
Nice. So you're coming up on 7.
No, coming up on 6.
No,
6.
you're coming up on 6.
Yeah.
Okay, almost 6 years. All right. Sorry. My math is bad. Anyway, all right. With all that out of the way, we're going to turn it over to you to share your story with us. So take it away.
Sure.
Start at the beginning or go Tarantino style. You be the judge.
Start right in the middle.
Start right in the middle, bounce to the end, and go to the beginning.
No, I want that now.
Make it a puzzle.
I want a Tarantino.
A Tarantino
share.
story?
Like
Okay,
a Tarantino share, like I want someone to go in.
But then everybody's
like
going to die. Everybody dies in that story.
No, just start at the end.
Okay, and work backwards.
Go to the middle. And then
I don't think I can handle that today.
Yeah, not today.
So, Joe, you do you.
Straightforward. From the beginning, go.
Well, it is funny because I did ask David before we jumped on here. I was like, is there anything that's like off limits, right? Is there anything that like shouldn't be talked about? And then he, like gave me one, and I was like,
Yeah, politics. That's it. That's it.
and I was like, okay, good. I'm glad that was the answer, because I was like, I don't think I've ever shared about politics and don't plan on it.
Good.
yeah. I mean, we can talk about some like activism. No, we're not talking about
Activision.
activism around like recovery policies and like drug policy and stuff.
That's
But
a whole different topic.
Not
meeting.
into like Republicans and Democrats. We don't give a fuck about either of them.
Get back behind the curtain and do some Excel
I'm saying I
spreadsheets.
don't give a fuck about either of them.
But that's one of the things that I like about like where I guess at least like the about Narcotics Anonymous and about like the recovery kind of scene that I've immersed myself in, is that there's really nothing that's off limits, right?
Yeah.
Like if I had came in and had been like sharing about the things that had happened to me when I was younger, or things that are like in my story, and people had kind of stuck their hand out and said, hold on, like we don't really discuss those things here.
Yeah.
We discuss these things, but
no,
don't talk about those things.
That's what we want.
That might have like driven me away from like the time in my life when I had a lot to say, right? When I had a lot to say, when I had been through a lot, but then, didn't really have an outlet for those things, right? And I remember going to, and I'll go back to the beginning in a second, but I remember going to therapists, right? I remember going to therapists, and when I had been introduced to recovery, I guess like tangential programs, right? Like programs through hospitals that were meant for like adolescents, like because I got introduced to like kind of like those group therapy settings as an adolescent. And there was always lines that you couldn't cross. Right, like there was always things where like if you had disclosed certain information that like people as like mandated reporters would not be able to they would essentially
police
stop.
Reports come in and it gets serious. At
Right,
that point.
and that was one of the things that made me like recoil a little bit from those things. Is I had a lot of those things like in my story that the moment that I felt that at that time it's a very like vulnerable state, right? When you had just kind of you're very raw at that point. Like on the other end of like the trauma and like the devastation that is like and the chaotic mess that my life became. And then when I finally had enough courage to like share some of those things, that someone stuck their hand out and said, well, hold on, if you go any further, then we're gonna have to start writing this down, type of deal. And so that made me kind of like withdraw from that a little bit. Because like I had I have a story where like I when I share, like I don't want things to be off limits, right? Because I had a story that like where things definitely were not within the limits, right?
Yes.
I was outside the limits.
That is my
things
story.
that happened were outside the limits. So let's just like tell it the way it was. But yeah, so I and like I said, I grew up in Olney, and I grew up in a definitely like a middle class home. I got an older brother and a younger sister, and we had everything we everything we needed, everything we wanted. I had a very like stable childhood. I really like wanted for nothing as a kid, right? Growing up, I had a lot of friends. I got involved in sports at like a really early age, and so I started to see like what that that like team camaraderie kind of looked like.
You're a baseball guy, right?
I'm a baseball guy.
Who's your favorite Oriole of all time?
Wow, that's a great question. I feel like by default I have to say Cal Ripken, but I think a close second, or
He's
probably
the Chris Carter of the MLB.
Well,
I'm right.
He was like a little bit
Gore?
before my time, but a close second, and probably would be number one if he didn't join the Yankees at the end of his career, was Brian Roberts. Right, because I'm a Brian Roberts guy. Like I was like a second baseman and a shortstop, and when I played baseball, and he was always kind of on the smaller side, like I am, just like in stature, and he was always kind of scrappy. Right, and
did he ever play for a good
JJ
team?
Hardy, right?
Brian Roberts.
Did he play for who?
A good team? Didn't he just
He played for the Yankees at the end of his career, and I was just like,
well, but for us, didn't he play during like one of the worst stretches? For us, like,
for the
most part, yeah.
Right?
I mean, he played on a bunch of teams that went nowhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress. So you're coming up.
Growing up, I like always wanted to be like my older brother, right? He was always the he was 2 years older than me, which at the time seemed like a lifetime, right? Like he was like larger than life when I was growing up, right? He was he was bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, better looking. He was like the guy who got the girls, and he a little bit before I did, right? Like he started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and immediately that was attractive to me, not because drugs and alcohol were like inherently attractive, but because my brother was doing it, right? And so that was kind of like my first like foray, right, into.
Do you remember your first drink?
I do, yeah.
What was it?
I don't remember what it was, but I remember the event, right? I remember like my like friend's sister like giving us a 6-pack, and it was like it wasn't like, oh my god, like I didn't like black out the first time I drank, but it was like we shared like 6 beers among like 4 whatever it was at the time, like 12, 13-year-olds, and we were like, oh my god, like this is different, right? I feel different. And but like that wasn't the like event, right? What had happened as we moved forward was that I just wanted to continue to like do all of the things that my brother was doing, right? And I wanted to, and as I had other friends who were starting to use drugs and alcohol, I wanted to do what they were doing. And so I did, right? I was definitely a follower as a kid, right? I wanted to do the things that made me look cool in your eyes or made me, acceptable to you. And, as a kid, it was like sports.
I was the exact opposite. I
drugs
was the
and
leader.
alcohol.
I was like, hey, everybody, come do all the drugs I'm doing. And, that's
Me
too.
terrible.
I was a little bit of
Yeah,
that too.
I was the instant.
I was the instigator. I was the kid that could steal cigarettes and steal alcohol.
You
So I
don't
was like,
want to try cocaine?
Yeah, I was
What the
like, come
fuck's
be a
wrong with you?
degenerate. It's cool.
Like, you don't want to wake up right now. Like, cocaine will get you up. Like, it's 12 o'clock. Like, you're tired. I mean, do a real cost benefit analysis of your night. Right?
God damn it, Eric. Keep going, Joey.
But that was just how it was, right? It was very
Of your
simple for me,
night.
right? I wanted to be able to like hang out with the cool kids, and that kind of involved two things. One was playing sports, and the other one was doing drugs and drinking alcohol. It was a pretty simple recipe growing up of like what made people kind of like popular to the other people, and that was it. And so that's what I did. And that was kind of like where I was at in like, let's say like middle school, right? And then as I got to high school, it's like things started to change the moment that, we start to get some more freedoms and like getting a license, for example, right? Now I have more freedom of movement and I'm able to, go places that I wouldn't normally go. And I'm able to see things I'm not able to see or, it's like you gain those resources that you need to like get and use drugs. And right in a car and being able to have freedom of movement and a license is a big one, right? Probably the biggest one. And so, I mean, how is it now?
bound by your feet and bicycles before that?
Yeah, you're bound to people coming to you.
Nerd I was riding around on a bicycle with a bong in my backpack.
You actually, I can imagine. After
100%
hearing
I did
some
that.
of your like high school stories, I just think you were definitely like a geek, David. Like, I know you sound like,
That is so insulting.
You put this like Bender type persona on, but then it's like, I don't know, you're cheering for like the women's volleyball team and like full, Oakland Mill bar.
The
theater?
women's volleyball team, our volleyball team was awful, and I never supported them.
Sorry,
The fact you know that,
men's basketball.
right?
That's what it was, right?
I know. Yeah, it is men's basketball,
soccer, and football. Absolutely, I was there.
And theater.
You're not
And
really,
theater.
you're
And
not
theater.
John Bender, dude. I mean, maybe there's something on like
You're cutting to the core of me, and I don't want to get into this.
what is
right
that?
now.
What was that show?
Right,
in,
today,
like, the
today
2010s?
our guest on this podcast is David O.
Yeah, I'm getting. What is this? A fucking roast? Get out of here! Stay behind the curtain. Back to you, Joey. Jesus Christ.
But yeah, I wanted
Rickles
to fit in. I wanted to be cool. And I got that license and I was able to kind of, go around and do things and like smoke weed with my friends and in a way that like up to that point had not been possible.
Yeah.
Right. We would like go on blunt rides and we would go, get like weed from our dealers and we were having a good time.
Yeah.
Right. We were having a great time.
Yeah.
And the biggest consequence was like,
New question.
Yeah.
Where was your first blunt ride?
oh God,
Right?
on the back roads of Howard County.
Well, I know,
Yes.
but we have we have Ilchester, right?
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
We have
Dude, I
a
have so
very
many.
specific river road in Catonsville.
Oh, yeah.
But you guys
Which
could
is
have
a
like
great
had
road,
some of the Howard County, the Frederick, like you could go into like even Carroll County and start getting into some fucking like
dude.
cornfields and shit. Like,
Dude, we had Mount Zion. We had Jennings
like
Chapel,
Mount Airy
Howard
area.
County.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
so what a great like
Long
your
Corner,
your
all
Burn
these
Run
roads.
Road is called Mount
God, Long
Zion.
Corner.
It was
remember that
Mount
fucking-
Zion Road was the beginning.
Yep.
I mean,
I
listen,
know
hold
exactly
on.
where you're at.
I've never shared. I never shared this. So we had this like labyrinth of roads,
Where
right?
there's no
labyrinth
cops.
of
No
roads.
cops.
Yeah. You'd lose cell phone service, and you
Yep.
were like really getting off the grid. Annapolis Rock Road, and
Yes.
these were places
God, those are my favorite.
Yeah, like these are places that like were like the biggest streets.
It's just
Available to
windy
me, right?
roads
Windy
and
roads to
woods.
nowhere.
Yes, avoiding deer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was like the extent of my using when I was like, like kind of like in middle school, early high school, things like that. And then like things started to progress and started experimenting with other drugs. I had friends who started experimenting with pills, with opiates and with cocaine and, drinking alcohol a lot more. Alcohol became more prominent in high school as they were like parties and, trying to stay in the middle, right? Like we talk about a lot in Narcotics Anonymous, we talk about like staying in the middle, of recovery. And I was trying to stay in the middle of like the
scene.
being cool in high school scene, right? And I tried doing that. And I did that successfully until I didn't, right? Until I started doing opiates, right? When I started doing opiates, it had became clear to me that all of the like negative side effects of like doing like weed and alcohol and cocaine were not present with opiates, right? Like I could, function like I had convinced myself that like I could function at a higher level when I was on those things. It was clear to me when I smoked weed, I got very sleepy. Right.
Yes.
When I drank alcohol, like I could not keep the wheel straight.
Yep.
Right. And like in my story, and I'll talk about it. Right. Like, you know, like I've crashed cars. Right. Like,
Dude,
I've
you
crashed
talk
cars.
fast
I've like,
already. I could not imagine you on cocaine.
dude,
I would have been like, what are you, is this gibberish? What are you saying right now? Slow it down. On cocaine.
I think it's the coffee. The coffee is brewed excellent, by the way. Eric.
yeah.
Oh
this is
wait,
great.
okay. So yeah, this is Death Wish coffee. So I'm sorry if you aren't used to like
that is
lots of
fantastic. That
caffeine.
makes me happy.
Yes.
So this is like the strongest coffee, I guess.
So Eric has dosed both of our, other people here.
I'm
with
just
his
sitting here
coffee.
so
and this is
content.
just
No, you're
Eric.
second very
This is
nice.
just
I'm
Eric.
not.
So you're functioning on opiates.
Yeah. I'm functioning on opiates. And I was probably like 18 at the time. And, you know, this was right around the time that I like, you know, right towards like the end of high school and I graduated. And I'll just say this. So I was, I was always a pretty good student. I had like straight A's in high school.
Yeah.
I was like taking the AP classes. I did really well, like to get, and I got into University of Maryland, College Park, and that's where I ended up going to college. And, there's a period in time in high school, and this was like where I started to live the double life, right? I started, skipping class, and I would just like, smoke weed or do pills, and I would not go. And then I would always, I would not scrape by. I would like get by with excellence, right? I would go in. It was like the subject matter wasn't that difficult for me. And like that showed something to me early on that like I can keep doing these things over here, right? Like the drugs and the alcohol and things like that, as long as I'm continuing to like get good grades. That was the deal.
You got a degree, correct?
I did.
What is your degree?
So my degree's in chemical engineering, and I was in
cool.
And I was in like heavy active addiction
yeah.
all throughout college. I would.
You must have made great drugs in college, like some GHB and. I'm not wrong, am I?
No, it's like when I was in college, like that was where and this is only in hindsight, right? That
So wait,
like things
hypothetically, can you make LSD?
No.
You can't?
I think you're thinking more chemist.
Okay.
Right. So the chemist will tell you exactly kind of like the chemical makeup or maybe the production process. And then they would come to the chemical engineer and ask me, how do I make thousands of, gallons or kilograms or pounds or whatever of this in a commercial process, right? Like at a scaled up version of this, right?
Okay.
How do I take the small scale to the large scale?
So you're on
type of deal.
you're the macro side of it.
Yes,
Okay.
the macro
Got
side,
it.
precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, I mean, college was not a fun time for me, right? Like, I do not have very, like, fond memories. I mean,
College Park was a blast, and I didn't even go there.
I mean, it was just getting and using, right? For me,
Yeah.
there was a point in time, like, early on where it just became, like, sustaining, where the thought of just getting sick was so horrible, right? Was so uncomfortable, that it became just like maintenance of my like my habit, right?
Yeah.
Maintenance of my addiction.
Yep.
And I always joke about this because I've seen college do a lot of things to a lot of people. I saw a lot of people drop out. I saw like way too many people in tears,
Yeah.
right? Like going through college courses and like taking exams and things like that. And I would just be so high, right? So high. and I was just like, I was just so unaffected by everything, right?
Yeah.
I was so unaffected by like the other like stresses that people were feeling. Like I was stressing about getting and using. I was not stressing about like, oh my God, what happens if I don't do well on this test? So I would,
Yeah, of
and at this point I had found heroin, right? And I was a full on like
PG County, Maryland, of
IV
course.
drug user, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I would like go into the bathroom, like, and I would like shoot dope and then like go into an exam, and people would come out of the exam crying because I didn't think they did well, and I would walk
You're
out
just
of there
fucking
like,
suited.
and I would walk out of there like, I'm sure that went well, right? Like,
Joey, you graduated while like in active addiction, right?
yeah,
Like I'm guessing like. Okay, so the way you talk, where you lived, I'm guessing you probably got like at least a 3.7.
yeah.
Yeah. So you were fine, right, during that period. Like you're saying, like you didn't. I'm just like because I was fine, dude. I graduated with 3.75, right? Like I
As
got
did
high
I.
the whole time. Like I was using.
I was homeless while
You
you
know?
guys were in college. Guys.
But it's interesting because a lot of
Sounds
people are like,
amazing.
I could never do that. Like how do you think you were able to accomplish kind of like the double life of you know, getting like being an IV drug user, but then also being like, oh fuck, dude, I gotta like,
an honor roll college.
That's a tough question.
Collegian.
Yeah, no, it's a
'Cause
great
I
question. I get asked that all the time, right?
Yeah,
How did those two things coexist, right? And like I had said early on, back when I was in high school and just like smoking weed and getting good grades, that was when like that was kind of my license to continue to live that way, right? Because that was like part of the game for me, was like I need to continue to like, you know, like work hard in a sense, and I still had to like study. Like it wasn't like that easy for me that I could just get by off of pure like you know, like intellectual ability. And so I had to still like and like I don't know, I would get high and like those things became like
More fun.
more
They are
interesting
fun.
to me, man. Like
Studying and getting high.
the things I was, and you guys talked about it because you were asking me like, can you make LSD? And you get excited asking about it, and
I really
you know,
do.
the things that I was learning about were like exciting to me, and so I was able to stay engaged, and I was able to I was able to get through that because that was the that was the deal. That was the deal that I made. If I continue to like get good grades and stay in school, this will keep me off the radar of my parents, right? At the time, like, because at the time, like I had been in trouble up to that point. I had already been like, arrested for like selling weed as an adolescent. I had already been like arrested for, possession, paraphernalia, and CDS. And so like I needed to like kind of stay on the straight and narrow in regards to school in order to like keep the double life alive. So it was
a very elaborately constructed mask.
It was definitely a transactional,
facade,
yes. So it was just like this large facade of like I was doing these things by day and these other things by night.
It's literally magic. Yeah, it's sleight of hand. I'm going to show you this while more shit is going on.
Exactly. Like I looked great on paper.
I'm just magic.
I looked great on paper, but all the other things like were kind of crumbling around me, right? Like
I really hate you, Eric. On so many levels. Like I'm literally sleeping in a Pontiac vibe. You're like, I think I'm gonna go to Chicago and check this out for a while. Fuck you, Eric.
And you're just like, I think I'm gonna go shit in this golf hole over here. Maybe on the back nine. I'll just do it right here on the ninth hole. So before they turn.
God damn it, son of a bitch. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, that was essentially what happened. And I ended up, graduating with a degree and like a great GPA. I got a job after school, and that's really where things like took off, right? That was the beginning of, I want to say the beginning of the end, because like we talked about like resources early on. We talked about like getting a license, and when I was in college, I was extremely broke. Right. I didn't just have like money floating around. So like the level of desperation that I reached to in college, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but there was just like a whole lot of, I had to be extremely creative, the way that I would, and like the degradation, right? The degradation that like I subjected myself to in college, in order to like get and use one more time was horrific, right? And that was the subject of a lot of the things that like later on that I would attempt to bring up, especially like with maybe with like mental health professionals or like therapists, and those were the things that were off limits, right? To talk about being like mandated reporters and things like that. So so that was just like a pretty like, traumatizing time, right?
Yeah.
Just like living in like, and it talks about in the, in the NA literature, right? Like living at like an animalistic level.
Yep.
And that's what I was doing, right? I was, staying up all night, getting and using, trying to find ways and means. And then like by day, I would like kind of just like stumble through life and stumble through the college experience and try and like just hanging on by a thread. But I made it through, right? And then I started to get some actual resources, right? I started making some like actual money, and after college, and that's where really things took off. I started the way that I used was the same, but where I used and who I used with started to kind of perpetuate that inevitable downfall where like the wheels fell off. And, I started to do a lot more using in Baltimore City, right? I started to do a lot more using with people and in places that like, I hadn't thought that, I would go to.
That a kid from Olney would end up in.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I went there and I like stood in the lines, right? And I like, they moved me right up to the front, right? And they like got me the hell out of there. But like those was like the moment that I stopped having to call drug dealers to get drugs was the beginning of the end, right? Like when I think about,
what do you mean stop having to call drug dealers?
right? So
you.
yeah, so no, so like what happened was that like when you go to certain places in Baltimore City, right? Like there's no calling someone to see if they're available, right? Like the drug trade in Baltimore City is a business that
it's
has
an open air drug
that
market.
has operating hours, right? And like so they have business hours, right? And I'm not joking, right? And I didn't need to like call and say like, hey, is this person? Hey, can you drive to me? It just became like a lot. Drugs became a lot more accessible
to you eventually.
Yeah, and so it became a lot more accessible from that standpoint. And that was, the moment that I, realized like I did not need to like wait. I did not need to call. I did not need to like figure anything out, because up to that point it was like these elaborate schemes in college, right? It was elaborate, like, I had to jump through so many hoops to use in college, but then I was like making money and
like
and the schemes became a lot more like simple, right? After that, I didn't have much else to figure out. Exactly.
Come here, get this.
Come here, get this. Yeah, and then get the fuck out of here.
Bye.
Right?
See you later, narc.
Yeah, and and that was kind of the beginning of the end, right? Because like there was even less that was in between me and my drug of choice at that point. And that was like where the wheels fell off. And so I'll just kind of fast forward a little bit to the end that, I had a job that was like paying me well at that time. And, the routine was I would get up in the morning and I would, go into the city, and then I would go to work. And then during lunch, I would make another run. And then after work, I would make another run down and back. And, one time I was, on my lunch break, and I don't know what anybody else did on their lunch breaks, right? But like I was getting high. And, and I would get high, and then I would come back to work, and I was working in this factory, and there's like all this machinery, like doing all these cool things. Like I worked in a factory that made cosmetics at the time, so it made makeup, and so they had all these like intricate machines that would like do all these cool things, right? And put together these packages, and I would get high, and it would just be so fascinating to me, right? Like I would go in there and there would be like, we would have problems. And as the engineer, I would be the person tasked with figuring out these problems. And it was just like more of a testament to like how I was in college. It'd be like, okay, well, let's like, apply some problem solving skills. And again, like this is the trade-off. This is the balance, right? These things remain interesting to me, and I can continue to like stay in good standing with my employer and continue to like get, to like make money, receive a paycheck, in order to use drugs, right? Until I couldn't, right? And that fateful day looked like, woke up the same I did on every other day. And I went out to lunch, and I went down to an area in Baltimore City, and I got drugs, and then but before I knew it, I was I was getting shoved in the back of a cop car, right? And so I got thrown on the ground, and I ended up going to central booking, and then
it's crazy that like I never would have seen any of this from you. Like
what?
And so
it's just I don't know. Prejudicial mind. I don't know. He looks like a good, upstanding citizen, and I like talked to him enough that I was like, this is a really intelligent guy, and he's talking about like going to central booking in Baltimore City, and it's like, yeah, did not see that coming.
Wow, judge much?
Well, shut up.
But it is a good point though, because those are the things that I would
But when you talk to
use
Jack,
to my advantage, right? I would use those things to my advantage because I was able to like present these things to people. I was able to present this facade to people, and they would buy it.
Yeah.
Right? People would buy it. My employer would buy it. My parents would buy it. My significant other at the time would buy it. And that just like allowed me. I didn't have the other consequences.
Face, so she's just like, oh, you're gonna get away with it,
right? And I didn't have the other consequences at that time, right? I had some like legal consequences, some financial consequences, but I was able to like maintain appearances like as long as possible. And like I said, I ended up going to central booking, and I took what I always joke about this, right? I took like a 5-week lunch break from work, right? Like I like went to jail, and then I ended up, they gave me a choice, right? You want to go to, you want to go to jail, you want to go to treatment. And I was like, yeah, I want to go to treatment.
Yeah.
And
did you really want to go to treatment, or did you just not want to go to jail?
I just didn't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
Right. No, that was an easy choice for me. That was an easy choice. And I wish I could tell you that was like the last time that I used, but it wasn't. But like when I went to treatment, I had that was when I was like really first introduced to the rooms of recovery, right? I wanted to say Narcotics Anonymous, but that wouldn't be true. So like after I got out of that treatment, I was still like, I was still like living at my parents' house. I was still like in my hometown, and I started going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous in my hometown. And I remember I would go and I would share some of the story that I shared with y'all about, being an IV drug user and like doing heroin and drugs, right? Because I never drank like alcoholically, right? Like it just wasn't really my thing, right? My first beer would be getting warm in my hands as I was plotting, right? As I was plotting, scheming to go get my drug of choice. And so I would go into those meetings and they would tell me,
you might be in the wrong place there, fellow.
So no, and that's the point I wanted to make here, is that they didn't say any of those things, right? They just encouraged me to keep coming back, right? I had very limited experiences with alcohol, and I was in a vulnerable state, and I'm very appreciative to the people who were in that meeting the first time, who didn't tell me, hey, get out of here, right? Hey, we don't talk about those things, right? So like. And I mentioned it earlier, right, about things being like off limits to talk about, but like nobody said that to me at that time, and I think that was a huge kind of like confidence booster, that like, okay, these topics are acceptable because these are the things that I've been not trying for years to talk about, but these are the things that I need to talk about, because these are the things that are like, making my life unmanageable, and these are the things that had caused me like total powerlessness over the drugs. These are the things that had subjected me to a level of like desperation in my story that that made me lose hope, right? That made me lose hope that like I could ever get out of the situation, because after I was using for a while, it just became about maintaining. And so like I went to those meetings, and I had been going there for at least a couple months, and I wasn't clean yet, but one of the guys pulled me up after the meeting, right? And he told me, hey, he didn't say, hey, get out. He said, hey, there's a place where you might be able to, identify more with people's stories and with people who are more your age, right? And people who are more like kind of have the same experiences that you do. And so then he took me to the midnight meeting.
Oh, nice.
Right? He took me to the midnight meeting. This guy had, and
you can drop his first name if you want.
Man, yeah, Pat. Yeah, it's Pat E. He
Oh, I thought I was thinking of a different Pat.
Yeah, so he was man, what a guy, right? Like he took me there, right? He didn't just tell me about it. He took me there.
That's awesome.
Right? Didn't know me from anywhere. Took me there. And that was when I got my first hug in Narcotics Anonymous, right? And that's where my story took off, right? So I told you I went to jail. I came into treatment, and then I went into a recovery house with other people in recovery, and and that's where I met Josh M, right? And that's like where my recovery really started to take off. And I met Matt R, right? Who's no longer with us, right? And those guys really opened my eyes to what Narcotics Anonymous had to offer. Really opened my eyes to seeing the benefits of the program, right? We talk about freedom from active addiction, and that's what I saw like extremely early on. I experienced losing the desire to use. Like, let's talk about losing the desire to use. What a gift, right?
Oh yeah.
Like being in a state of total desperation, and then like feeling that little bit of relief from the drugs. Like after I had went to treatment, right? I had like, however many days clean at that point. And I had experienced in the recovery house within the first few months, like losing the desire to use, and being able to share things with people that I had never shared with people. Things that I thought I would never share with people, like the ways in which I was harmed, ways in which I harmed other people that I was ashamed of. And, I started to see in myself that I was capable of getting better. Right. That I was able to make some like tangible improvements in my life. And so, I made the midnight meeting my home group, and I stayed in that home group for 5 years. Right. I celebrated my 5th year clean there, and, eventually moved on. But like that home group was a cornerstone of my foundation of recovery, right? Where else would I be on a Friday night, Saturday night at midnight than the Serenity Center? That was the place to be for me, right? And when I got clean, I changed everything. I changed everything, man. Like I don't have any acquaintances from like my using days. I have maybe like a friend, maybe 2 friends from like my childhood who I still keep in touch with, who I'm still on like good terms with, but like most of the other bridges were burned. And like through working like a thorough 8th and 9th step, like I've reconciled some of those to a point of like making sure that that I made amends to those people, and not just made like apologized to them, but amended the behavior, right? Because that's the important things that we talk about in our literature. But still, I amended those situations, but still don't keep contact with them. Right? And I immersed myself in in the way that we are. In like a recovery lifestyle, right? All of my friends today are in recovery. All of the people that I surround myself with and spend any meaningful time with are in recovery. Things like, like holidays, birthdays, all the events, like they're all with people in recovery. Yeah. And they're all with people who have, stories that are, similar to mine, but different, right? Different experiences, but have all experienced the
feelings.
Yeah, the feelings, right? That level of desperation, right? Like, people who were beaten, right? Yeah. And then became willing to like practice a new way of life. And then it talks about it in, the first step, right?
And when you say beaten, it really wasn't like, yes, the drugs beat us, but we just beat ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we beat ourselves into the ground.
Right. And not like a physical beating, right? But when we were beat down as human beings,
absolutely.
Right? From like living in that, in that place of, living in that place of utter desperation.
Yep.
That and only after admitting complete defeat was I able to like get help, right? And start to be able to recover. And that was when I experienced that first surrender of like, there is no way that I mix with drugs, right?
Yeah.
There's no way for me to like live a sustainable, successful lifestyle while I'm using drugs and alcohol. And I like while I was using, I had convinced myself, right? I had thoroughly convinced myself that using was a way of life.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's actually something that Eric brought up to me, like in recovery. He was like, there's actually a first surrender in addiction when you surrender to, this is just who I am now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're like, the drugs, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I'm a junkie, I'm whatever.
I'm good with it.
And you're okay with it.
Right. The drugs are a power that's greater than me, and I'm going to surrender to that
surrender.
Power. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I started to experience the freedoms, right, that the program and the gifts that the program had to offer. Mm-hmm. And, when I got clean, I got busy. Like,
yes.
I got busy. I got a sponsor and I started working steps, and I was like a reliable, consistent member at my home group. Man, when I was using, I was the most unreliable person.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Because, listen, the birthdays, the holidays.
If it came to drugs, I was very reliable.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean.
Very
right?
reliable.
Yeah, when it came to like commitments that I made outside of using drugs, they were non-existent. Couldn't hold a commitment to save my life. Right? Countless missed holidays, birthdays, experiences like with my family and like other loved ones that like I just at the time, right? Like the drugs were a power greater than me. That was an easy decision at the time.
Yeah.
Just skip it and go get high.
Yep.
Right? That required no thought. And I felt in the moment, I felt no shame, no guilt, no embarrassment. I didn't
I was like,
really feel anything.
Really? Turkey sucks.
Right. Yeah, turkey's dry. Right? I didn't feel anything.
Turkey sucks.
Turkey sucks.
Yeah. And
dumb bird.
I started working the steps, like, and I started to get a little better, and like I started hearing about the things that would help me improve, right? And I came in and my decision making process was shattered. My self-worth was shattered. Mm-hmm. Like you could not convince me that I was worth anything. And so I started focusing on self-esteem and self-worth building activities, right? And one of those things that I did was join an NA softball team, right? A co-ed softball team. And within my first year of being clean, I was asked to coach that softball team. And like, I did not understand, I could not comprehend at the time what was happening for me in my life, right? What other people were giving me the opportunity to feel useful again, right? If you couldn't ask me with, a little bit of clean time, like, oh, what does it take to stay clean long term? I don't know. I've never been clean before. I have no idea. But on the softball field or the baseball field, right? If people needed help with like, how do you catch and throw the ball? Like, how do you field the ball? How do you catch a pop fly? How do you do these things? What are the rules? Yeah. Right? Those were things that was a way in which I found that I could be extremely useful, right?
Unless they deserve it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I found myself useful again, right? I found myself useful again for the first time in an extremely long time. I was able to be of service to other people without getting anything from it, right?
Yeah.
It was not a transactional relationship. It wasn't transactional like all of the like people that were in my past who it was, we were, that I was using with, but that was like a really big, like motivator for me to like stay clean, right?
Yeah.
And to help other people. And I realized the importance of being consistent, right?
Oh,
and I was in a home group and I was making the coffee. I was there greeting people at the door, and people became like genuinely happy to see me.
Yeah.
And then something miraculous happened, right? Like I started I worked a 4th step, a 5th step, a 6th step, a 7th step. And I started to like get more in touch with like who I am as a human being, right? And I started to get to the exact nature, right? We talk about the exact nature a lot of times, and we talk about being entirely ready in Narcotics Anonymous. And those two phrases have been just like monumental, right? Like they were a turning point. Is when I got to the exact nature of my wrongs, and I realized how transactional my relationships were.
Yep.
When I realized how much of a sham my previous friendships were. When I realized like how wishy-washy I was as a person, and how unsure of myself I was, and how I was inconsistent in like making good decisions. Like all of these things, how egotistical, how arrogant I could be. It was only after admitting those things to another human being and like sharing the full story with them that I was able to, start to like make some tangible changes in my life, right?
Yeah.
I was able to turn the corner, so to say. And it's only through like the help of other people who have similar stories to me that could really identify with what I had been through. Because listen, like, I don't know if I could have gotten the same help from anywhere other than Narcotics Anonymous, right?
Yeah.
There's something, and it talks about in our literature a little bit about, the integrity, not the integrity, what is the word for it? Not the integrity, but like people start to gain, now I'm blanking on it, credibility.
Yes.
So like the credibility that is gained from like, the therapeutic value of one addict sharing their story with another addict, really, really opened up doors for me, right?
Yeah.
Because I started to see that like I was not unique, right? I was not the only person who was going through this. And growing up, I had no addiction in my family, no alcoholism in my family. None of my friends are in the program. They were all just able to stop. So it was like incomprehensible. Like I had never even considered stopping using drugs, right?
Yeah.
Until I was like at a point where I was starting to get sick every day.
Yeah.
So I had never observed recovery. I had never like seen anybody get to the other side of my hopeless dilemma, right? And we talk about the hopeless dilemma. I had never seen that. I had never seen anybody turn it around the way that I needed to like turn it around in my personal life. And so that therapeutic value really, really demonstrated itself when I was, working with a sponsor and getting to the exact nature. And I started to make those changes and started to be honest. Yeah. Right. Started to be honest with another human being for like the first time in my life. Right. Because there was always, I was just a habitual liar. Like, I was a total liar.
We couldn't be honest about what the fuck we were doing.
No.
At all.
No. I was totally incapable of being honest. And it was only through talking to other people who had been there that I found the ability, the courage to be fully honest with another human being. And so, like I said, like I continued to stay busy and, I continued working the steps and I got involved and stay involved. And I went to a recovery house, and I wanted to talk about this because I went to a recovery house called the House of Recovery before Bill S. corrects me in the future, a house of recovery called the Tradition House. And, that was another kind of like turning point in my recovery. I went there when I had like a little bit, or like around 6 months clean. And, I was in a house with 10 other guys, and I loved every minute of it. That was the first place where, I really had like the freedom to like be exactly who I was as a person, right? I didn't feel any like restrictions on the things that could be discussed or like the people that I could, associate myself with in recovery. And I really got my experience when I was there. I had, while I was there, I built, a lot of relationships that I still have today. Yeah. Right. I built relationships, and I was able to develop a life worth living. Right.
As you keep talking, Carly's just crossing off questions. You just keep answering them.
Yeah. We're good.
But I developed a life worth living, and we were talking about it before the podcast. Of I went there and I was designated as the project manager at the Tradition House, and the project manager's job.
Project manager?
Yeah,
Wait,
so
there's a project manager at a recovery house?
oh yeah, this was not a normal house of recovery. This was different, right? And as the project manager, it was my job to make improvements. Right? And I made improvements to that place, right? When I first started living there, we cleared out the whole backyard and we started to build a fire pit, and we dug up like 100 rocks that were like 50 pounds each, and we started
some big fucking rocks.
and literally I was laying the foundation of that house as I was laying my own foundation in recovery. We built this fire pit.
Write down, Eric.
Wait, what was that?
Laying my foundation in recovery. Boom.
God damn.
That's the title.
Sexy. Yeah.
And listen, and I don't know if Eric's been there, but I know both of you have been there, and Carly and David, like that whole like backyard with the fire pit and the cornhole. Like I think, myself along with other members who were at the house, built that all with less than maybe like $100 worth of investment. Like that was a whole lot of like the sweat equity, right? Oh, yeah. And we really put in the work there, and that was such a rewarding experience for me, because people would come to the house and they would say like, oh my God, this is so different. It didn't used to look like this. Like, who is, kind of leading the charge here? And I would feel so much pride, right? To say I was leading the charge here. I was not the only person, doing the work, but I was leading the charge for those things. And, I like helped transform that place into a place where other people wanted to come live.
Oh yeah, it is.
People would
attend
attend functions.
It is a hub of West Side.
Yeah, and it is still like home base for me. I can still walk
4th
through
of July,
the door.
You're going to come up there and see 100 people.
Yeah.
Just congregating and, having a good time clean.
Yeah.
And getting a wildly dangerous fireworks show that is way too close.
Way
too close.
Yeah, way too close.
Catonsville.
We'll have Jeff. Well, I'm going to get Jeff on.
You need to talk
next,
to Jeff about this.
Because we're winding down for 2023, so actually you're our second to last guest of the year.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but no, we're going to get Jeff and his New York accent on here. I'm going to grill him about those fireworks.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and it's still, to this day, is kind of like home base for me. Like, I can still walk through that front door and nobody in that house looks at me like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Right? I'm just still...
I built this place, motherfucker.
I'm still welcomed with open arms, right? And I still find that today in recovery, right? I've like built, relationships that'll like last a lifetime, and like, people still like welcome me. And it like took a while to realize that those are the things that I like value most in my life, right? Like I value the relationships. I value being able to go back through the front door. I value being able to, to call people and not feel like a total stranger.
Are you crossing off another one?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. So, I'll just fast forward it to current, right? I have a lot going on today. I have a lot like going for me today. Like I've been, like stable in my professional life. I know I mentioned that I got a degree in chemical engineering. I work as an engineering manager for a pharmaceutical company. I've been there for about 4 years, and I'm, like continuing to like lay the foundation for the rest of my life. Right. And, I have a fiance today who who I love, right? Who I love dearly. And, we're talking about like, like big, exciting things, right? We're talking about like buying a house, and we're talking about moving, and we're talking about making this thing our own, and like really putting down some roots, in this area. And they're things that, like I knew were possible for me, but they just happen over a period of time that I need to make sure that, that I'm like keeping my eyes downfield, right? That I'm able to like see the big term or the like longer term picture. And, like I said, I really built a life that's kind of like worth living, at least in my eyes. And so all those things are extremely exciting. And I'm just as clean, just as excited to be clean today as I was when I, had 60 days clean in the first recovery house that I went into. Like, recovery has never gotten like boring for me. Like there's kind of like the peaks and valleys, but I've never questioned that this is exactly where I belong, right? That these are the people who I need to surround myself with for the rest of my life, right? Because I've just experienced the miraculous turnabout, right? And that's what Jack M always says, the miraculous turnabout that happens in our life when we get clean and we start to like live this new way, and all these doors start to open for us, and they stay open,
Yeah.
Right? Like I was so used to like having doors kind of like slammed in my face.
Yep.
And it was usually me doing the slamming.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like I was putting obstacles in my
You're
own
slamming
way. Right.
the door in your own face.
Right. I was putting the chains on myself.
Should I go in here? No,
Right.
fuck this door.
Right.
This door sucks.
Right. And I was like putting the chains on myself, man. And I was you know, I had like backed myself into a corner of my own choosing, right? And like I needed the help of like people in Narcotics Anonymous and my, you know, a power greater than myself to you know, to free me from those chains. And and that's what I found. You know, I'm like super grateful to like continue to be here, and I have you know, a life beyond like my wildest dreams. And like I'm excited. I'm excited for myself, and I'm not used to talking about myself in this way because you know, I'm not used to having, you know, I mean maybe a little bit now, but like I wasn't used to having.
You get a quick 5 minutes.
Confidence.
You get a quick 5 minutes, and then that's it. In a meeting,
right?
Because like you don't want to be selfish and
right.
vomit or take over the meeting and all that shit. I get it.
Yeah, and yeah, and I'm excited to like continue to like be in the process and to see like what the future holds for me, and you know, to continue like trusting in the process that has got me up to this point, because you know, I wouldn't be here without the other people in NA, and you know, people that you've had on the podcast, right? I go back and I listen to their stories, and you know, they're people who I hold, you know, in extremely high regard, and I feel like I don't tell them that often enough, right? The people that have helped me so much, right? People that have given me like opportunities in here to reestablish some self-worth. Yeah. Right? To help build some self-esteem, and to help you know, be a contributing, you know, like responsible, dependable member of society again. Right? Because there's nobody who would have, you know, attached those things to my name when I was in, you know, when I was out there.
Certainly not me.
But I think they would today.
You three, you know, you guys at least like had something going for you. I was terrible.
What?
Really?
What do I guess? Yeah. I'm kidding.
I hate
Sorry,
you.
David. I'm kidding.
All right. Well, let us get to questions.
Yeah, sure.
Because we definitely have some questions for you. Ladies first.
Okay.
So, David?
Dude, the amount of shade in this room is just ridiculous.
We're going to
dare
start
you.
easy with one of the few questions I have left, since I crossed multiple of them out. Well, now that you are not in active addiction anymore, like what, almost 6 years, do you still find your career choice fascinating?
Oh,
Wow, that is a great question.
that's a good question.
I would say yes, right? Like, you know, and I'm glad you asked that question too, because like ever since I was a kid, I was like in high school and I was taking like chemistry classes and math classes, like there was a certain comfortability in like the ordered way in which those things happened, right? Like those things fall together. And I became kind of like a person who really appreciated like science and engineering, and like really grounded myself in like the way that things work, right? The way that they're put together, and the way that you know, machines and equipment work. And but in the same breath, I cannot deny the like magic that happens in Narcotics Anonymous, right? Like I'm like a person of science, but like I just can't. There's still some things that I find inexplicable. Right?
Yeah,
like
science doesn't explain everything.
No. It can't, like relieving the obsession to use drugs. Yeah, right. Explain that one. Right. Like there's no like equation there. There's no formula there. Yep. So like I find what I do intriguing, but I also can't like deny the other parts of just like of the human experience that are still like I still can't put words on or explain.
Neat. I'm gonna start with a fun question that might get you into a little bit of trouble. But I want to hear something goofy or funny, totally cheeky and harmless that Amber does.
That Amber does?
Yeah. Just something about her.
Is this your fiance?
Yeah, this is my fiance.
Just something funny about Amber that like when she listens to, I can't believe you said that, babe.
Yeah.
But no, harmless.
Yeah, no, I mean...
I'll give you an example. So we had our friend Tara on here, and I was like, so what's something funny about Pat? She was like, every morning he wakes up and rips a giant fart, and that's how I know he's awake. And I was like, okay, that's hilarious.
Man, well, since you stole that one, I can't say that one.
Okay.
No. But yeah, I don't know what it is about Amber, but she is incapable of closing cabinets after opening them.
My husband's the same way.
Yeah, the cabinets to
And it
the
bugs the
coffee,
hell
the
out of me.
cabinets to the plates and to the cups, and they're just open everywhere. And sometimes when they're on, like, it's funny because I have a cat, right? And when they're on the bottom level, I'm like, oh, the cat must have opened the cabinet because she likes playing with the cabinets.
it was Amber.
But when it's up high, I'm like, okay, that one, I know who did that one.
That's funny. That's my thing. I'm surprisingly, as a guy, I'm the one that doesn't turn off lights. I leave lights on a lot. It's bad. I have to actively do it. Like, oh shit! I don't instinctually leave a room and turn the lights off. It is not something I do. The cabinets, that's bad.
The cabinets.
Amber, we're gonna cabinet shame you. Hopefully you listen to this and work on it. Can I ask a second one?
Sure, go ahead.
All right.
Look at that guy over there.
I asked. I mean,
Yeah, and it's okay because I have like 4 questions that got crossed out.
Well, I have questions too, so go ahead. Dave.
Oh, would you like to go ahead?
No, you're first. Go
Okay. At what point in your story did you come to the conclusion that you were an addict and or had a problem?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. The moment that I started getting sick, and I remember it clearly in college, the first time that it happened, right when I was, because there was always the little schemes, right, where I would come up on some money, and I was able to do those consistently, for a while, and then once they started to run out, and I was burning bridges, and then there was the days where I couldn't use, or couldn't figure out a way. Then I would start to feel the physical effects. And that was when I realized that something is wrong with me. Yeah. Right? I can't go to sleep. I'm staring up at the ceiling for 8 hours, and I want to crawl out of my skin, and I'm hot and I'm cold at the same time, and I'm sweaty, and something is wrong with me. Right? And that was when I knew that there was that I was in trouble. Yeah. Right? And that there was not a straightforward, it would be I would make the commitment to myself, okay, I'm just I'm not gonna use today. Yeah. And that would last
12 hours.
Not even. Yeah. It was a couple hours, and I would start to feel the physical effects, and I was like, this is unbearable. Right? I'm a baby when it comes to pain, physical discomfort, things like that. And so I immediately was like, yeah, this can't work. I cannot address this currently because I have way too much else on my plate. I cannot address this. I need to keep using, to keep maintaining, to get through this, and then once I graduate, I'll get clean. Right? That makes sense. Oh, yeah. That's how it works.
Yep.
Right?
Someday down the road. Right. Yep. All right. What have you got, Eric?
All right. So this is something I used to get a lot when I was actively in fellowship recovery. But you seem, you grew up in MoCo, right? Probably upper middle class, went to UMD. There's a difficulty sometimes when, let's say, you're well educated. You come from a good family.
Sticky hands. Ew, you got slimy hands. What's
sometimes
wrong with
you?
Hot coffee. Ew. It makes me clammy.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
You emit slime with.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
She's like a hagfish.
Well, so how do you kind of come to terms with some of the, I guess, differences that you run into in recovery, right? Not everyone's going to have, we were talking about before, right? Not everyone has a plan for their life. They don't have I kind of want to have this house in 5 years. I'm going to start working towards that.
I have no fucking idea what this question is.
I
think I understand it.
Yeah. So how are you able to look at kind of comparing in rather than comparing out?
Okay, there we go. He got
due to your
after beating around
kind of how you grew up and how you kind of approached your addiction compared to how other people approach their addiction.
How do you relate to Jack, who shot dope for 30 years?
Well, not just Jack, right? Because you shot dope, right? I'm talking more about just socioeconomics of it, because that can be really difficult.
Yeah, that's a good question, and honestly, it's the kind of David just kind of touched on the answer a little bit, is that by looking for the similarities and not the differences, all of the pain, right? All of the the level of desperation, it's easy for me to not look at and compare out using my socioeconomic status growing up, because look at where I ended up, right? I'm not confused that you can end up where I ended up regardless of your upbringing.
Yep.
Regardless of whether or not you grew up where I grew up or grew up where someone else grew up. It's like you end up in the same place. And I firmly believe that like nobody ends up in like Narcotics Anonymous by mistake, right? I didn't just like, like, oh, this is a nice place to hang out. I think I'll stay, right? Like it was the solution to the, to the problem that I had, right? It was like the answer. And as other people have, surrendered to the process of recovery, I think they've also come to that same conclusion, and that's kind of what brings us together versus the other things, because we talk about it in our readings, right? We don't care about those things, right? And I firmly believe that. Yeah, we don't care about any of those things.
Lack of religion, yeah.
But I will say that, like, my story is a little bit different, right, from everyone else's stories, and their stories are all a little bit different, and so is David's and Carly's. Like, your all stories and Eric's. Everybody's is a little different, and you never know when that one person is going to be out there that did grow up the way that you grew up or experience the same things you did, and will finally, identify in with the group that, hey, there's people here that are just like me that also, found a way to, live a new way of life. So I'm always, that's what I always am hopeful for, is that there is somebody there who has those experiences and can find the other side of them too.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Carly?
So back to Amber. So your lovely fiance. Ooh. You both are very. Amber's been on here.
We had her on the podcast, dude.
We did?
A while ago.
What's her last initial?
A. So you both are very, very involved in recovery. So how do you two manage to manage your recovery within your relationship, or kind of on the flip side, how do you manage to keep your recovery separate from your relationship?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that question, because I tell this to a lot of the newer members in recovery who I talk with on a regular basis, like at places like the Tradition House, is keeping your recovery separate from your significant other is extremely important, right? Because one of the dangers is that, like, they become everything, right? They become the person that they become your sponsor.
Higher power.
Yeah, they're your higher power. And, you go to them for guidance, you go to them for like strength, and you go to them for all the things that like we need to be using, our sponsors for, our networks for, like men use other men for, women use other women for. And so it's a slippery slope. But one of the things that I remind Amber of and remind myself of all the time is that, I need to trust that Amber's also working a program and that Amber has a sponsor. And if there's an issue, that, maybe like if I get to the exact nature of my wrongs, I need to work that out with my sponsor, right? I need to have enough self-awareness that I bring those things to my sponsor and we help get through them. And if she has those things that she works with her sponsor, I don't need to be the person who's pointing out Amber's defects directly to Amber all the time. Right? Amber's working a program and will bring those to her sponsor. I firmly believe that. And so I'm not always the person, I don't need to be the person to like bring those things to the forefront, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that that's just relationships in general, because we deal with muggles, people who are not in recovery. And I know like I pull Kristen's inventory. Like, I'll pull cards that, like, you're not doing this shit. I know you pull Garrett's every once in a while. You're like, motherfucker, you're not doing this shit. You're not doing that shit. But, yeah, like, being able, like, it, and, like, I've talked about this in different podcasts. Like, keeping score is a dangerous thing to do in a relationship. But, yeah, when the other person has a program as well and is working on themselves, it's a little extra piece of trust, that because Amber's doing her thing, she's great.
I have to trust her sponsor.
Yeah,
honestly, like I have to really believe in her sponsor.
Yeah, and
that she is having regular conversations, and that her sponsor's not just telling her what she wants to hear, or is ignoring things. Right? I have to trust that like she's in the process the same way that I am.
And a lot of the times when I do stupid shit like that, it's just me being a dick. So you talked about sponsor, and this is actually, I think this is a good question. You recently changed sponsors.
Yes.
And we are now Sponsee Brothers.
We are.
Yes. Whoa. Fantastic. So this is a two-parter. What drew you to Herb? And describe the difficulty in the situation of switching sponsors, because I don't think we've ever really talked about that on the podcast, because it can be a tricky, part of recovery.
Yeah. And it's I'll answer the second question first. So switching sponsors is difficult, right? It's not easy to you're not ending a relationship per se, right? But you're basically changing the nature of that relationship, right? Like it's not going to be as intimate of a bond with that person.
Was there fear of like hurting the person's feelings? Was that part of it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Great.
It wasn't, and it's mainly because like I mean I know that like, and I hear this shared and I believe it, right? That if you don't think you have the best sponsor in Narcotics Anonymous, then you need to get a new sponsor. If you don't think that person's best for you, like move on. I need to believe that my sponsor, the one I'm leaving, right, has enough recovery that they'll understand, right? That that I'm doing what I think is best for me, and I could be totally wrong, but like that's one of the freedoms that the program has given me, right? Like the freedom of choice, right? And that like I have the confidence today to make strong decisions, right, and change direction, and not be questioning my decision at all points in the future. I had a sponsee who recently just he had a sponsor, and then he asked me to be his sponsor, and then he went back to his original sponsor. I said, good for you.
Yeah.
Right, please.
Did you work your steps with your first all of the steps with your first sponsor?
Not my first sponsor. My first sponsor would show EF, and after that I got Jack, and then I worked all 12 steps with Jack.
Good. So you have worked the steps. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, actually. I have worked all 12 steps. It took me about almost 5 years, so I'm back on my first step again, and
we reserve the right to fuck you up, Eric. I'm not quite done. Neither is Carly. He's a dick.
Yeah, but what drove me to Herb?
Herb's great, by the way.
Yeah, Herb.
He was my second choice when I was originally looking for sponsors.
Yeah, he's great. And one of the things is that like people whose recovery that I respect also chose Herb as a sponsor, right? Like there's something to be said for like kind of like crowdsourcing recovery, right? Like
I like that.
I really
that might be a title.
You can give that one to Amber. She'll never let me live it down.
So that's her.
It's an Amber term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
Crowdsourcing recovery. That is great, actually.
Yeah, and I people whose recovery I respected also chose Herb, and I've had conversations with Herb, and I've seen the insight that he's been able to like help other people get, and then him and I sat down and had a few conversations where we were sitting just the way that you and I are sitting now, and he was very patient, he was very kind of inviting and open to the conversation, and wanted to hear the same thing. He asked me the same question. He said, "Why me?" Right, and then that was when we kind I got into it, just about like
getting
the things that were important
getting him
to me.
To shut the fuck up. That's the trick. I love you, Herb.
Yeah.
You said that.
I 100% said that. Yeah,
I call him. I call Herb.
Dude. If you watch him in a parking lot talking to people, I call it his meat hooks, because you'll see the group of people, and then Herb and whoever he's talking to just slowly just start drifting away from the group. They just keep taking like a step back and a step back and a step back, to the point where they're like 20 feet away from everybody. And just once Herb has his meat hooks in you, you're in trouble. You're in for like a 2-3 hour conversation.
A great conversation, though.
Great. It'll be life changing. But yeah, Herb's amazing. Yeah. All right. Who's next? Eric, Carly.
Eric, you got more?
Well, I can come up with more, but Carly, you've only asked one.
I've asked two.
You've asked two.
Yeah, she's asked two.
Do you want to ask the layup question?
The layup question.
Yeah.
Manifestations.
Yeah, that was the only one I have left.
Go for it.
Go, and then I'll do the next one.
So in what other ways has your addiction manifested itself in your recovery?
It's changed from when I got clean to today. When I first got clean, it was it was things like shopping, right? Like things that because when I got clean, I got an instant raise, right? I all of my money wasn't going towards drugs. My rent was extremely cheap, and I was still making decent money. So I had a lot of money to like spend on stuff, and I spent that stuff, I spent it like shopping on like frivolous things, like things that I didn't need, right? Things that I didn't need, things I just wanted.
Give me an example. What's a frivolous thing?
It was like watches, right? And like at the time, it was. I don't know why
would
it
you
became
need more than one.
I'm not a watch guy.
Yeah, so
I don't like watches.
I like I got an Apple Watch. I'm a fan of that.
Amber and I always joke because up to that point, I would joke that I was a 1-watch guy, right? Like I was like firmly like I don't need more than 1 watch, and then I became a 2-watch guy, and then a 3-watch guy, and now I have like a. You know,
Do you ever wear more than one?
at the same time?
What are you, a psychopath? Who does that?
Well, I'm just
do you
asking,
rotate them?
know? Yeah.
Yeah, I rotate them. Wait, Eric, have you?
By days of the week, or
Yeah, Eric,
Do I wear that?
do you wear,
That's the thing
do
is,
you wear multiple watches?
I rarely even
Why
wear
would
them.
you have multiple watches though?
I don't even wear them that often. I don't wear them to work because I
You don't
can't wear
have one on
jewelry,
now.
like to work in like certain areas, and so
I do have a pocket
every now
watch.
and again.
A pocket watch is amazing.
I do have
I
a
would
pocket
love
watch.
a pocket
I
with
have
a
a very-
nice like. Do
was-
you have a nice chain too?
I have a pocket
Yes,
watch.
so
Do you
it was
really?
actually
my phone.
years ago. It was given. They all collectively threw in. The Wolfpack got me a pocket watch because they felt I needed it for my
The
3-piece
Wolfpack.
suits.
You guys sound like the X-Men.
Yeah, we are. Dude, listen to that podcast. It's great. Yeah, because it was me, Brad,
Yeah, Brad.
Donnie, Matt S, and Nathan. That's a really good
There's
podcast.
enough. There are other people.
And, dude,
that were in the Wolf
Brad
Pack.
is silent throughout like 60% of it, and then he comes out with like 2 of these knowledge bombs. That you're like, where the fuck did that come from, dude?
Did you have the whole Wolfpack on
Yes,
the podcast?
yeah.
Except
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
it was-
two who aren't here anymore.
Yeah. No.
Well, you
it
got
was
enough
just one.
monitors for
It was
it.
just Kyle.
I thought Zach was also in the Wolfpack.
No, absolutely not.
Zach Booth?
No, he was
No?
not. No.
Okay.
No, absolutely no.
But more recently, it's been. I recently just came back from Vegas. I went to a trip to Vegas, and more recently, it's been. It's not that it's gambling, right? But like it's not like I'm going off to the casino
Is it
every other
FanDuel?
weekend. But when I'm at the casino, right, it's like
to bet on.
yeah, it's just almost like an inability to stop, right? Like I still love the still in my brain. There's some part of
the
my brain
rush.
that loves
Yeah,
the rush, right?
yeah. It's-
Loves
yep.
putting
Dopamine,
everything
serotonin.
on the line, right? Like
yeah.
would love nothing more than to
Fucking
like
let
bet
it
the whole
ride.
house savings that I've been working on black, right?
No.
well, so
God.
have you started dabbling in sports betting?
I love sports.
I have
I'm on
dabbled in
DraftKings
sports
right
betting, but not for any like huge amount of money or anything like that.
When they
I
were
did
giving away the free money
Yes, I
last
did the
year,
free
I was
bets.
like, "It's free money."
Me
Well,
too. And then when it was when I was done, I cashed it out.
Yeah.
Same, and I haven't gone back.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that David O and Brad coerced me because they're like, you get the
did.
sign up
I
bonus.
remember that.
We're sitting in Brad's living room and David's like, yeah,
Like, dude, it's $200 free dollars.
right, use my referral code. Use my referral code. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll use your
And then
referral
I
code.
got more money. Oh my god, yeah, I did.
So pretty
Oh my
much,
God,
I'm a
that's
victim.
terrible.
I'm a victim
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I
I
of
totally
the
understand.
situation.
Yeah, my husband did the same thing to me. He wanted the
The free money, the
yeah.
free bets.
if
Yeah.
I signed up.
I accidentally screwed him because
Yeah.
I didn't realize the first bet had to be $10, so I only made a $5 bet, so he didn't get anything from me.
So I actually did the same thing to Amber too. I was like, Amber, you have to sign up. You have to sign up. I get money.
It's free money.
I get money.
Yes, it's free money.
Yeah, I'm like, you
They're
get money.
giving away money.
You get money, and that's cool and all. But I get money.
Yeah, but I get money.
Yeah, no, that's
and I
great.
care about this. And she's like, okay, whatever. Oh, that's funny. All right. Eric, do you have one last question?
Oh, I did. Fuck.
Or I can
Where
ask.
did it go?
or I
Ask another one, and I'll remember mine.
All right. How much? Oh, yeah. No, we're on our last question. Last question. I don't want to ask any of these as the last question. I think that I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Are you good?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. One quick minute. Talk to anybody out there who's struggling, needs to hear a message of hope. What do you have to say directly to them?
Oh wow, I was not expecting this.
Oh yeah, this is the tough one.
Right. Insert cliche.
Oh wait, no.
cliche,
I did have a
cliche.
question. Have a
Okay.
question. Okay, hold on. So, you,
Don't beat around the bush. Get
No,
fucking to
I'm
it.
getting there, fucker. Okay. So you're about to get married, right?
Yes.
And start a family and like buy a house. You just mentioned a little nest egg. Okay, so this is something David has mentioned a few times, like with kids and stuff like that, where you're kind of starting this new part of your life, and there are reservations that like you never thought were possible, right? Like, what if your fiance dies?
Oh
my God.
God, dude, I have never referenced that. Okay, yes, I have.
I
But
get dark sometimes,
Not
right?
in that way.
But what if things
Sorry,
go?
Amber, we're killing you off.
But you
Sorry, babe.
You understand things like change. Like, what if I don't know. What if you guys like finance like things go to shit? You know, like things happen, right? Like, so what are some reservations that you didn't foresee like 5 or 6 years ago that you might have to now work on with her?
I have talked about
like
that.
because life changes, man.
Yeah, good question. And I think I'll answer it in kind of a circular way, right? Like we talk about, we talk about like in our 11 step, right? We talk about like being okay no matter what, right? We talk about like being okay with or without material success, with or without a partner, with or without, financial, success or, and I really, I don't think I don't think I have any reservations, right? Like, cause I know that, through my story, right, that I should have been dead. Right?
Yeah.
I was gambling with my own life for a number of years, every single day. That like, I don't think there's nothing that comes to my mind at all that like, as a reservation for like, well, what happens if this thing happens? Like, what will happen is that I will continue to do the things that I've been doing for almost the last 6 years, and apply them to this new thing that just happened, and my reality might change, her reality might change, our reality together might change. All those things are possible, but I don't really like future trip like that in the well, let me start like thinking about those things in advance so I can prepare for, I don't really think that way. Like I really do, just to use the cliche, like, kind of take it a day at a time, and I know that like, no matter what, as long as I like don't use drugs, that like I will find a way to like be like okay as a human being, right? I will be able to get to the other side.
I guess it was you with Magnus, right, David?
Oh, yeah,
where
with
you were
my
just
son,
like now like there's a reservation where it's like fucking you up, like you're crying about it, like, and
dude,
waking up in the middle of the night.
it's a new level of fear that I did not know was a thing, because becoming a father, and it like, if anything happens to this child, it's like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, because like it would just be so monumentally psychologically and emotionally devastating that I couldn't fathom it. And it's fucked up, because we've had these conversations, because like in that scenario I've been like, I might just kill myself. Like, that would be horrible. And I don't want to say that, but it's also like, I don't know how I would get through that. And then on like the flip side of that, like if something happened to my wife, it's like, I don't have that option because I still have a son. So it's like, I just have to endure that situation. Like,
you gotta be strong for the kid.
You got to be strong for the kid. The kid can't lose both parents. So like, I just have to endure that situation on a level of misery for however long. But once those really important relationships come into my life, like in early recovery, I didn't think about that. But then I get a wife, and I'm like, oh my God, my mind is fucked up. So I'm like, what happens if something happens to my wife? I don't know. What if something happens to my kid? I don't know. But yeah, that's the better way to handle it. Just don't future trip. I'm just an idiot. But that is a great question. We'll actually talk about that more. But yeah, back to your 1 minute. Talking to anybody struggling, what do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I think what I would say is, it took me a while to like realize that like, that this was the answer for me. That like that like total abstinence from all mind or mood altering substances was the answer, right? That there was no possibility of a life for me while I was under the influence of anything, right? And every time we give out like white key tags at a meeting, right? And people always have something they want to say, right? And and what I tell people is like take a chance, right? Like you never know like where this life can take you. You never know when you're gonna find that person. And I found it in Matt R. And I wish I had shared about that more, right? Because he ended up like overdosing and passing away, and he was instrumental to my early recovery, right? That you never know who that person is that you're gonna meet, who has been exactly where you've been, and for the first time that you might feel a part of instead of apart from, right? And like finding the people who you identify with might just take you to like a new stage, a new chapter of your life that you've been looking for the entire time. And that's certainly what happened for me. So what I would say to people still struggling, or people who are still out there who aren't sure if this is for them, right? Like is find your people, right? Find people that you can identify with, and like those people will, those people like be open to receiving help, the help that you need, right, to like get to the next point.
They can love you until you love yourself.
Right.
All right. All right. Well, we would like to thank our guest Joey for joining us today. All right. You did a great job, bud. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And here at Podcast Recovery, we're aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us once again. Please go to all our social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. More information about us, podcastrecovery.com. Like, share, subscribe. If you'd like to become part of the home group and join our Patreon to help us keep the mics on because we are self-supporting, that is greatly appreciated. And DM us if you would like to come be a guest speaker with us. We'd love to have you on no matter where you are in the world.
We're starting online again.
Yeah, we're going to have some international people again next year.
And some people from the States.
Oh, yeah. We'll be dibbling and dabbling all over the place.
You don't need just, people with fancy accents, David. Recovery comes in all forms.
But those are my favorite people.
I know.
Irish people, Scottish people, English people.
I don't understand what the fuck Scots are saying, dude. Like, what are you fucking?
How dare you?
Like,
how dare you to disrespect the Scots, you son of a bitch?
It's not fucking English.
God
it's
damn.
Something else.
Oh, I hate
But
you.
most importantly, everyone out there,
Stay safe.
stay safe and stay clean.